Perek Yud Zayin, Mishnah Beis. The Mishnah continues our theme of Muktzah, and we're now going to discuss several illustrations of the category of a Klisha Melachto Le'issa. Now we mentioned previously that a Klisha Melachto Le'issa means a utensil whose primary purpose is for a prohibited activity, but sometimes it's used for a permitted, a mutter activity. So the classic example is a hammer. A hammer, of course, is used normally in building work, which is also on Shabbos. However, you could use a hammer for a mutter purpose, for example, to crack nuts. So therefore, it's got a status, it's called a Klisha Melachto Le'issa. And the rule for a Klisha Melachto Le'issa is that you can move this keli l'tzorech gufay or l'tzorech makomo. What does that mean? L'tzorech gufa means that I need to use the hammer or the keli itself for a permitted use. For example, to take the keli, to use the hammer to crack open nuts. That will be mutter on Shabbos, even though the hammer is, of course, a Klisha Melachto Le'issa, normally used for an osa activity. Nonetheless, if it's used legufay, to use the actual thing for a permitted activity, then it's mutter. Alternatively, you could move it l'tzorech makomo. So, for example, on the Shabbos table, you're about to set the table for Shabbos lunch. You notice there's a hammer on the table. So l'tzorech makomo, I need that place right now because I want to sit and have lunch here with the family. So therefore, l'tzorech makomo, I'm allowed to move the hammer. When can you not move it? So you can't move it if it's not legufa, if it's not lemakomo. For example, you want to move it mechamo letzel. If it's sitting in the bright sunlight and you want to just put it inside or put it away somewhere, then you can't just move it for that. You can only move it l'tzorech gufa, l'tzorech makomo. That is the rule of a Klisha Melachto Le'issa, and this Mishnah, Mishnah Beis, is going to give several illustrations of this exact point. Says the Mishnah, a man is allowed, you're allowed to take a hammer in order to crack nuts, for the reasons we just said. Even though a hammer is a Klisha Melachto Le'issa, primarily used for an osa activity, if it's used l'tzorech gufay for a permitted activity, it's mutter. The kardoim, a kardoim is some sort of hatchet, some sort of sharp knife, a small axe. Lachtich es hadveila, to cut a dveila. What is a dveila? A dveila is a very common food in the times of the Gemara. They would take figs together and they would press them very, very tightly and they would make a cake. And because they were squashed together so tightly, you would need some sort of sharp knife to do it. And if you wanted to use an axe, a hatchet, to do so, there would be mutter. The Bartanura says, Hadveila is lachash also ego, after you make it round, you squash it into a round shape, hoya ova, it was very thick, the kosher, and it's hard, the tzricha kadem lachta, and therefore you need some sort of hatchet in order to cut it. Continues the Mishnah. Megeira ligra bois hagvina. You're allowed to take a saw in order to slice some cheese. Imagine the sort of the big round cheeses, and you want to cut a slice, and if you've got a saw there, you want to use that. So then it's been mutter to use the saw to cut the cheese. Says the Bartanura, ligra bois hagvina lechatcha, to cut it, ulechalka, to divide it up into slices and to give to people, lechalokim, sha'alidei pekimoiso, because of the teeth on the saw. It will be able to cut through something which is very thick and hard quite quickly. Continues the Mishnah. Magrefa ligreif ba es hagrogres. You can use a shovel to scoop up dried figs. Says the Bartanura, Magrefa ligreif ba es hagrogres minachovis. Imagine you've got some figs in the barrel. You're allowed to use this shovel, which is normally used for gardening or for building purposes, but to use it for a mutter usage to get out the figs from the barrel, that would be mutter. Es harachas ve'es hamazleg loses olav lekoton. You could use a rachas and a mazleg, which again are instruments used for gardening or for malachas. The Bartanura says the rachas is a luach, is like a plank, a piece of wood. Sheyesh lo beis yad v'shtei defonus v'zorin bois hachita. It's got like a plain base and then two sides at the bottom, and it would be used to be in the malach of zorah, of winnowing the wheat. And a mazleg is like a pitchfork. The Bartanura says a kli sheyesh lo sholosh shinayim. It's got three teeth. Umahapchim bois hakash. You use it to turn over the straw. So why are you using this thing? You're taking one of these instruments, a shovel or a pitchfork, and you want to, the Tiferes Yisrael learns, you want to try and give some food to a child who's on the other side of this small stream. Now an older person would just jump over the stream, but a younger child doesn't want to do so. So you're allowed to take this long implement and put some food at the end of it and sort of pass it over the stream, and therefore the kid can take the food off it himself. So you're using a kli shemelachta le'isa, the tzorech gufa for a hetzer use, and therefore that's allowed. Es hakush ves hakarka, says the Mishnah, a kush ves hakarka, these are needles, or they're sort of implements used by a person involved in the spinning process. The Baratanura says kush is a pelech shetavis beis hanoshim, used for spinning by women, or karka is some sort of needle. It's some sort of wooden needle used in the weaving process. And previously we've described the weaving process as a complicated machinery where they've got pedals and the like. But now we're talking about where you've got an individual thicker needle which is going to move around the threads. So these things, if you want to use those for litchov boy, to use it to thrust, as the Bartanura says, litchov bo lechol bo tutim v'kol pri rach, to use it to thrust into a berry or into some sort of soft fruit, and to use that and to eat it, that would be mutter. So you're using a keli, which is melachta le'issa, which is normally used in the weaving process, in order to eat, to thrust it into some soft fruit and to eat it, that's okay. Machat, a needle, shel yad, little bo'es hakot. So if you want to take a needle, which again is used, says the Baratanura, machat katana shetoifin bo begodim, which is used in the regular sewing process, and you want to use that needle, little bo'es hakot, to take out a splinter, that again would be mutter, because that's a permitted activity on Shabbos. Now, the discussion, of course, is that it might cause bleeding. So the Baratanura says, little bo'es hakot shenichnas besora, a thorn or a splinter had entered your flesh, shen mutter little b'Shabbos, you're allowed to remove it on Shabbos. And again, the reason is because it's a davar she'ein mischaven. You're not intending to draw blood. It's just a byproduct of what you're doing. And therefore, mishum refuah, etc. Therefore, because of the tsar the person is experiencing, it's allowed. And the Bartanura says it's comparable to the case of mapis mursa. Says the Bartanura, kamoishe mutar lahapis mursa. Similarly, it's similar to where you're allowed to be mapis mursa, to lance, to boil, to remove all the pus and the liquid. So long as you're not doing it in order to make the hole, that's not your intention, just to remove the liquid. So that would be mutter. And concludes the Mishnah. V'shel sakoim liftoyach boy es hadeles. Shel sakoim, a needle which is used by sackcloth workers. The Baratanura says machat godel is a slightly larger needle. Shetoifrin boy sakin, which is used to sew sackcloth. Liftoyach boy es hadeles. If someone has lost their key, the Baratanura says, Misha avdule maftech, you've lost the key, and you want to use this needle, a thicker needle, in order to pick the lock, that would be okay. So even though the keli itself is a klisha melachta le'issa, and is normally used for an osa use, nonetheless, to use it as in a permitted way to open and to pick a lock, that would be mutter. That is the end of Mishnah Beis.